Welcome to Zigmatech Learning Hub. I will be your instructor for agricultural science. For this class, we are going to be taking our exercises from the ExamGuide app. If you don't have the application already installed on your device, I will want you to download the app in order to follow along in this class. ExamGuide is the leading educational app that helps students prepare adequately for various exams like UTME, post-UTME, WEAC, GCE, KCPE, IJMB, JUPEB, KCPE, BECE, JSCE, NCEE, NECO, to mention a few. You can download the app from www.examguide.com or Google Play Store. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to be updated on new videos. Ready for today's class? Okay, let's get started. Living things need to survive, and as a result of these, they struggle for the limited resources available in their habitat. And these interactions with other organisms in the habitat could either be beneficial or harmful to one or both of the organisms involved in that interaction or relationship. In the topic, interrelationship among living things, we will get to understand more about this relationship or interaction. So our topic for today is interrelationship among living things. And by the end of the lesson, you should be able to explain various interrelationships among living things, and you should also be able to give examples of each interrelationship among living things. Now let's start with the definition of competition, which is an interrelationship among living things. The first we have is competition. Now, what is competition? Now, this involves the interactions among two organisms of the same or different species in which one outgrows the other and survives, while the other organism neither grows nor survives. So in this situation, two organisms are involved. They could be of the same species or they could be of different species, but the key word here is that one outgrows the other and survives, while the other organism neither grows nor survives. So the competition is also based, could be on limited environmental resources, which can be in short supply, and these environmental resources include the food, water, nutrients, gases, light, and space. So these organisms compete for these limited environmental resources, and in the process of competition, one of them is affected. So only one grows, while the other one neither grows nor survives. Now, during the competition as well, one organism has control over these resources, and because it has control over these resources, is able to grow and survive, while the other one neither grows, as I said earlier on, or survives, and as a result of this, that other organism that neither grows nor survives is usually eliminated. Now, let's also understand this aspect of competition. When competition is between members of the same species, it is called intraspecific competition. And when this competition for these natural resources or the environmental resources such as gas, light, water, is between members of different species, it is known as, or it is called, interspecific competition. Now let's take a look at some examples of these competitive associations. We have the first as a competition between flowering plants, which are seed-producing plants, and grasses. Now, how does this relationship take place, or the competitive effect between both of these organisms take place? Now, flowering plants are usually large in size. You know, they could be based on their size and their branches and the leaves that they produce, the broad leaves they produce. They are capable of eliminating the grasses, which have probably slimmer, slender leaves. And so these flowering plants that are usually big in size end up depriving the grasses of nutrients, space, and sunlight, which is needful for these grasses to grow and manufacture their own food. So the flowering plants overshadow the grasses. And as a result of this, it deprives the grasses of these resources. And as a result of this, the grasses are usually eliminated. Now, this is just a scenario. This picture helps us see the effect of a flowering plant. Like that tree there, you'll see is a flowering plant that has grown so big, and you can see it has provided shade and has deprived the grasses of nutrients, space, and sunlight. So you can see that the grasses are not thriving well as compared to the flowering plant. Another example is the relationship between domestic fowls and young chicks. So there's a competitive relationship in this scenario. For example, now in this case, we have adult domestic fowls, competing with chicks. So when they are placed in the same environment, the adult domestic fowls will end up depriving the chicks of food in the same pen. If they are cohabiting in the same pen, the adults will definitely deprive the chicks of the food that is needed for their growth, and as a result of this, these young chicks may eventually die because of limited food available for them in their feeders. The feeders are the troughs that you can use to provide feed for the chicks or animals. Now this picture tells us, so you can see from the picture, you can see the bigger chickens and the smaller chicks competing for food. So in that picture, you can see, of course, the older ones will outsmart or the chicks there. So because they are bigger and stronger, they will end up eating the food first. And when they are satisfied, then the young chicks can now eat. Another interrelationship we could look at is what is called parasitism. Now, what is parasitism? This has to do, it's a feeding relationship or an association between two organisms. So in this case, two organisms are involved. And in this situation, the parasite lives in or on the body of the host. And as a result of that, it deprives or it derives some benefit from the host and also causes harm to the host. And in this process, the host ends up losing. So it's a feeding relationship or an association between two organisms. And in the organism, in this case, we're looking at the parasites and the host. The parasite, which causes harm or benefits from the body of the host, ends up being the one in an advantage in this situation, while the host ends up losing in the process. So such relationship is called parasitism. So it's a close association between two organisms. And remember, this organism, one of them is called the parasite, while the other that is being deprived or affected negatively is called the host. And in this situation, the host usually suffers harm and may eventually die. So let's look at some examples of parasitism. We have man and tapeworm. Now, tapeworm is a parasite. And the tapeworm usually lives in the intestine, the small intestine of man. And in this situation, man, which is the host, suffers losses in this situation. The tapeworm is the organism that benefits. How does it benefit? A habitat is provided. It also benefits because it enjoys protection, and it also benefits because it obtains food from man. So the food that man eats, the tapeworm now ends up eating part of the food that man has eaten and digested. And so this ends up depriving the man of nutrients, which is the host, while the tapeworm keeps growing and performing better, doing well. Okay, this is just a picture showing the effect of tapeworm, or the relationship between tapeworm and man. The tapeworm is found in the small intestine of man and causes a lot of harm and havoc to man. Another example of parasitism is mistletoe and flowering plants, which are seed-producing plants. Mistletoe is a parasitic plant or a plant parasite that lives on other larger flowering plants like oranges, tree crops. And as the mistletoe grows on these tree crops, the mistletoe benefits a lot from the tree crops or the flowering plants. How does it benefit? The host, which is the flowering plant, provides support and raises up this mistletoe, which puts it in a position where it's exposed to better sunlight. And so, remember, green plants manufacture their food in the presence of sunlight. So you find out that the mistletoe will thrive better and flourish better than the flowering plant. So in this case, the mistletoe, which is the parasitic plant, absorbs water and mineral salts from the flowering plant, which is the seed-producing plant, which is referred to as the host. And in this case, the host, which is the flowering plant, suffers loss due to the activities of this parasite. Loss of water and loss of mineral salts that has been absorbed by the host plant. So this is a picture showing the relationship between the mistletoe and the flowering plant. You can see this bunch here. There's a bunch there on the flowering plant. That is mistletoe, depriving the main flowering plant of nutrients, water and other nutrients as well. Some other examples of fungi that are parasitic to certain plants is what we're going to look at now. An example is Steligomaides, which is a fungal parasite that attacks the maize plant. We also have another fungal parasite that attacks maize and wheat or barley, which is known as Poussinia polypsora. We also have another fungal parasite that affects or attacks cocoa, the cocoa crop. So it thrives and survives on the cocoa crop. We have Phytophthora palmivora, is another fungal parasite. We also have Phytophthora infestans, which attacks or feeds on tomato or potato plants, which is parasitic to tomato and potato plant. We have Alternaria solani, which is also a fungal parasite that is parasitic on tomato and potatoes. Let's look at another interrelationship among living things, which is symbiosis. Now, what is symbiosis? This is a close association between two organisms. But in this case, both of them benefit from each other. Either of them benefits. So it's not a case where one benefits and the other is deprived or is in the disadvantage. In this case, both of them benefit from the relationship. So symbiosis is a beneficial association, and each member is called a symbiont. Now let's look at an example of a symbiotic association. Here we're looking at algae and fungus in lichen. Now a lichen is made up of two organisms, namely the algae and the fungus and the green algae, which live in a close association. Now in this situation, the algae benefits because the fungus encloses and protects it from physical damage and from drying up. So how does the algae benefit in this situation? The fungus serves as a protection to the algae by enclosing it and protecting it from physical damage and also from drying up. Now, how is this achievable? The algae will use some of the water that is absorbed by the fungus, while the fungus will benefit from this relationship by using part of the food manufactured by the green algae, which is, of course, green algae, so it has chlorophyll, so it's able to manufacture food. So the fungus benefits from the food manufactured by the green algae. This is a picture that depicts an explanation of what we're talking about between the algae and the fungus in a lichen. Another example of a symbiotic association is protozoa in the intestine of termites. Now let's take a look at this association or this relationship. Here the protozoa helps the termite to digest cellulose. Now what are cellulose? These are insoluble substances that are found in the cell wall of some plants, especially plants that are rich in fiber. So the protozoa in the termite helps it to digest cellulose in food that is consumed by the termite, while the protozoas are protected by the termites. So this is a picture that just explains how protozoa in the termite helps to digest cellulose. Okay, let's look at this relationship, which is a symbiotic association. Here we're looking at nitrogen fixing bacteria, which is in the root nodules of leguminous plants. Now in the root nodules, which are some swellings located in leguminous plants, for example like groundnuts, cowpea, or beans, these root nodules, which are found in leguminous plant, contains a bacterium called Rhizobium leguminosarum. Now, this Rhizobium leguminosarum obtains nutrients from the cells of the host plants. So the bacteria obtains nutrients from the cells of the host plant and uses it to grow and multiply. Now, in return, what does the Rhizobium leguminosarum, which is the bacterium, it helps to fix nitrogen into the plant. So the plant now benefits from this Rhizobium leguminosarum, which is a bacterium. So it helps to fix nitrogen into the plant, which is gotten from the atmosphere. And as a result of this, it increases the nitrogen requirement for these leguminous plants. Now this picture depicts what we're explaining. You can see the leguminous plant, you can see the root nodules, and is able to convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogen that is fixed and made available for the plants to grow. Another example of a symbiotic association is bacteria in the rumen of ruminants. Now, ruminants are animals that have a complex stomach compartment where we have the rumen, reticulum, omasum, and abomasum. Now, the bacteria or other protozoa that are located in the rumen of these ruminant animals, like the cattle that we are familiar with, the sheep and the goats, those are ruminants. They help to digest cellulose to sugars and also help to synthesize amino acid and vitamins from other substances. And how do they benefit in this situation? That's the bacteria and the protozoa. The ruminant is able to provide food and shelter for this bacteria and protozoa. This is a picture depicting the relationship between bacteria in the rumen of ruminants. We have another symbiotic association occurring between flowers and insects. Now, when we talk about flowers and insects, what comes to mind is pollination. So insects do obtain food from flowers, which is nectar, a sweet sugary substance. So, in the form of pollen and nectars, which these insects feed on, and as they are carrying out their feeding activities, they are able to transfer pollen grains, which are the reproductive gametes, from the male part of the flower, which is the anther, to the female part of the flower, which is the stigma, and pollination takes place. And this enables the plants to reproduce sexually. This is a picture depicting pollination. You can see the bee carrying out its feeding activities and also carrying out pollination, likewise the butterfly. Commensalism is another interrelationship among living things that we'll look at. Now, what is commensalism? It's a relationship or an association between two organisms of different species. Now, in this case, one is called the commensal, and this one benefits or gains, while the other, which is called the host, is not adversely or affected in any way. So it's not harmed, so that means it neither loses or gains in this case. So it's only the commensal that benefits, but the host neither loses nor gains in this situation. So it has to do with an association between two organisms living together. So only one benefits from the association, and as I said earlier, the other does not benefit, neither is it harmed. So let's look at an example of, or examples of commensalism. In this case, we're going to look at remora fish and shark. Now let's understand how the remora fish and shark relate in this situation, where one, which is the commensal, benefits and the other neither benefits or is harmed. So the remora fish attaches itself to the body of the shark, and as it attaches itself, the shark, moving about, the shark carries it about. And how does the remora fish, which is the commensal, benefit in this case? It feeds on the food particles that are left over by the shark. And as a result of this, the remorar fish will obtain food, protection, and shelter from the shark. But in this case, the shark, which is the other organism, is neither harmed or benefits from the presence of the remorar fish. So this picture depicts what I'm explaining between the remorar fish, or the association or relationship between the remorar fish and the shark. You can see the remorar fish attaching itself to the shark. You can also see the smaller remorar fish feeding on the leftover food particles by the shark. And the shark is not harmed in any way, neither does it benefit in any way here. Another example of commensalism is the relationship between oyster and crab. So now, what is the habitation of a crab? The crab can live in the oyster shell. So the crab can live in the oyster shell, and how does it benefit from this association? The crab is protected, and as a result of this, no harm is actually done to the oyster shell. So in this case, the oyster shell is not harmed, but the crab is the one that benefits. How does it benefit? It gets protection from the oyster shell. This is just a picture depicting what I'm explaining between the relationship between the oyster shell and the crab. Another example of commensalism is man and intestinal bacteria. Now, in the large intestine of man, some bacteria are located, and these bacteria feed on digested food that are been taken in by or ingested by man. So what is the relationship here, or how does the bacteria benefit in this situation? These bacteria they're healthy bacteria. They receive food and protection from man, but in this case, the man neither gains nor suffers any disadvantage from the presence of such bacteria. This picture also depicts the relationship between man and intestinal bacteria. We also have predation, which is another interrelationship among living things. Now, predation is a type of association between two organisms, and here we have what is called the predator and the prey. So the predator kills the prey and feeds directly on it. And in this case, if you observe a such relationship, the predator is usually larger in size and is usually stronger than the prey. Okay, so it derives its food from the prey, and in this case, the prey is completely eliminated as a result of the feeding activity of the association between the predator and the prey. So let's look at some examples of predation. We have the hawk and the chick, which is a domestic fowl. So the hawk serves as a predator, and the young chick serves as the prey. So the predator, which is the hawk, catches, kills, and eats the prey, which is the young chick. And in this case, if you observe, you can see that the hawk is stronger and bigger than the chicks, while the chicks are usually small and eliminated completely as a result of the activities of the hawk. This picture just depicts the hawk trying to prey on the domestic fowl, the chick of the domestic fowl. Another example is the lion and the goat. Another example of predation is the lion and the goat. So in this case, you can see the lion is the predator and the goat is the prey. The lion catches and kills and also eats the predator, then the prey, which is the goat. And in this case, you can see the lion is usually stronger and bigger than the goat, while the lion also benefits, while the goat is completely eliminated. So this picture just depicts this association between the lion and the goat as an example of predation. So we've learned so far quite a lot, so let's just have a recap on what we've learned so far. So in this lesson, we looked at the interrelationship among living things, which include competition. And what is competition is when one organism controls one or more of these resources, which enables it to grow and survive, while the other neither grows nor survives, leading to its elimination. We also looked at parasitism, which is a feeding relationship or association between two organisms in which the parasite lives in or on the body. If it lives in, is an endoparasite. If it's on the body, is an exoparasite of the host, deriving benefit from and also causing harm to the host while the host loses in the process. And we also looked at other examples or other types of interrelationship, which include symbiosis, commensalism, and predators or predation. Examples of various relationships were also cited as well. So let's take a look at the exam guide and let's practice some questions or answer some questions using our exam guide. Now this question is talking about striga, which is a parasitic plant. But in this case, I would like us to look at it as when I mentioned while teaching you, I talked about mistletoe as a parasitic plant. And I mentioned which particular crop or which particular plant is usually attacked by this parasitic weed. So in this case, we're not going to use striga as an example, we're going to use mistletoe. So mistletoe is a parasitic weed or parasitic plant of A, cotton, B, orange, C, groundnut, D, sorghum. In this case, the answer will be orange. Remember, I said we're not looking at striga. If it is striga, the answer will be sorghum. But if it is for mistletoe, based on what I taught you, I said it attacks tree crops, so the answer will be orange. So a fungus known as Phytophthora palmivora is responsible for which disease? A, Panama disease of banana, B, black arm disease of cola, C, black pod disease of cocoa, D, blossom end rot of tomato. The answer is black pod disease of cocoa. Remember, I taught you that it's a fungal parasite which attacks cocoa crop, or the cocoa plant. We have another example or another question, which says that the digestive function of the rumen in ruminant nutrition is enhanced by. I talked about certain bacteria that are located in the rumen of ruminants that help to digest cellulose. So the answer here, they said A, absorption of water. We're looking at the digestive function of rumen in ruminants nutrition. So A, absorption of water, B, presence of microorganisms, C, absorption of food nutrients, and D, retention of unwanted foreign materials. The answer is presence of microorganisms. They help in the digestive function of the rumen. They help to break down cellulose in the rumen of ruminants. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all the questions at the end of your practice test. You can learn a particular topic of interest with different modes like study mode, mock mode, and practice mode. It also has other features that make learning fun. It is a must-have for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and share the video to people that would benefit from it.